Today we're talking about drift. Here's a strange way to begin a startup story, with someone trying to escape success. It's 2014. HubSpot is going public. David Cancel is the company's chief product officer, and by any normal measure, he's arrived. The bankers running the IPO send him a message. He's a critical asset. He needs to stay. There are golden handcuffs waiting to make sure he does. For most executives, that's the moment you exhale and coast. For Cancel, it was the opposite. Being told he couldn't leave was the exact moment he knew he had to. That instinct, the pull towards something scrappier, riskier, less finished, is the thread that runs through everything Drift became. Let's rewind for a second. Cancel and his longtime collaborator Elias Torres weren't new to this. They'd already built and sold a company called Performable to HubSpot, which is how Cancel ended up as CPO in the first place. So this wasn't two first-timers looking for a lucky break. This was two operators who'd seen the inside of a successful exit and decided to do it again, on purpose, from scratch. In 2015, in Boston, they started Drift. And here's what makes Drift's story different from almost every other growth story we cover on this show. It's not about a product that found its market through iteration and testing. It's about a company that used narrative itself as a weapon, that treated storytelling not as a marketing function bolted onto the business, but as the actual strategy for carving out territory in a market everyone assumed was already spoken for. Let's talk about where this all started, with a single chart. The spark, a hockey stick in a world of forms. Cancel was flipping through one of Mary Meeker's famous Internet Trends reports, and one chart stopped him. It showed the growth curves of messaging apps, WhatsApp, Line, Slack, all rocketing upward. The world had moved to real-time conversation. People texted their friends, their families, increasingly even their doctors, all through instant messaging. And then Cancel looked at how B2B companies were treating their prospective customers. Static lead forms, long delays. A buyer shows up on a website, sees something interesting, fills out a form, and then waits, sometimes for days. By the time a salesperson calls back, that buyer has moved on mentally, emotionally, sometimes literally to a competitor's site. This was the insight. It wasn't really a technology problem. It was a psychological one. Buyer patience was dying, and B2B sales processes were still built for a world where people were willing to wait. But here's the complication. This wasn't an open field. LiveChat already had serious players, Intercom, Zendesk. Walking in as just another slightly better chat widget was a guaranteed path to irrelevance. Cancel and Torres knew that to win, they couldn't just be better. They had to be different. The birth of the narrative moat. This is where Drift's first real strategic gamble comes in, and it's counterintuitive. They walked into a crowded market on purpose. Cancel's reasoning was this. A commodity market is proof that demand already exists. The real skill isn't avoiding competition, it's resegmenting the market so you own a specific, defensible slice of it. Intercom was becoming synonymous with customer support, so Drift didn't fight there. They planted their flag somewhere else entirely, marketing and sales. At first, the idea was dismissed. A chatbot for sales reps? Reps didn't want to answer support questions, and the conventional wisdom was that bots simply didn't scale for that kind of high-touch selling. But Drift reframed the entire premise. The bot wasn't there to replace conversation. It was a filter, qualifying leads in real time, in the moment of interest, and routing only the high-intent buyers to actual humans. Still, the product alone wasn't what triggered hypergrowth. What triggered it was naming the movement. The first attempt at a name was conversation-driven marketing. It landed with a thud. Too clunky, too jargon-heavy, too much like every other buzzword in the SaaS graveyard. Then they landed on two words that changed everything. Conversational marketing. Simple, human, repeatable. As former Drift marketing leader Dave Gerhardt put it, the idea didn't really take off until it had a name people could say out loud and immediately understand. And once they had that name, Drift stopped selling a feature. They started selling the end of an era, the end of the lead form. The forms are dead crusade. If you want to see whether a company actually believes its own marketing, watch what it does to itself first. Drift ripped the lead forms off its own website. Then they declared war on the format entirely with a campaign called Forms Are Dead, and they even created certified form free badges to hand out to customers who followed suit. This wasn't a campaign. It was closer to a crusade. and it forced competitors into a defensive posture. Either they had to explain why they were still using forms, or quietly start moving away from them too. Instead of racing down the feature comparison path that so many SaaS companies get trapped in, Drift competed on philosophy. Their content strategy followed a simple internal rule: document, don't create. Rather than manufacturing polished marketing content, they documented what was actually happening inside the company. Cancel and Gerhardt launched a podcast called Seeking Wisdom. Notice what it wasn't about. It wasn't a product show. It was about leadership, books, the day-to-day grind of building something from nothing. They were marketers marketing to other marketers, in an audience that could smell inauthenticity from a mile away. Their bet was that honesty was the only kind of trust that would actually hold up over time. And then there's maybe the most memorable and least scalable tactic in the whole playbook. They mailed physical books to their audience. Titles like This Won't Scale and Hypergrowth, books that gave away their own tactical playbook for free, no strings attached. Think about the counterintuitive logic here. Most companies gate their best content behind forms to capture leads. Drift did the opposite. They ungated everything, removed every point of friction, and gave away the very insights that had built their company. The return wasn't an immediate spike in captured leads. It was something slower and more durable: brand affection. People started posting photos of the books they'd received in the mail. That's organic word of mouth, the kind no advertising budget can manufacture on demand. Pivots, risks, and the sales product loop. As Drift scaled, there was a real tension to manage, the pull between being purely product-led and building out a traditional sales-driven engine. Cancel, an engineer at heart, was cautious about hiring a big sales team. He drew on something he'd learned at Performable. Early on there, he'd hired one entrepreneurial salesperson. Her name was Heidi. And instead of putting her in a sales bullpen somewhere, he sat her right in the middle of the engineering team. That single-seating decision created a feedback loop. Engineers could literally overhear live sales calls. They learned in real time which product features actually resonated with buyers and which ones fell completely flat. No survey, no product meeting, just proximity. At Drift, this evolved into something they called Drift on Drift. Reps sold Drift by using Drift, live, in front of the prospect. Picture a sales rep messaging someone and saying, "Look at how I'm talking to you right now." And the demo has already happened. The product and the pitch became the same motion. The payoff was speed. Where a lot of SaaS companies need months to get a new sales rep fully productive, Drift was getting reps contributing meaningfully within their first weeks. That kind of efficiency is exactly the sort of metric that gives a board the confidence to pour more fuel on the fire. But there was a real risk lurking underneath all of this. When your entire brand identity is built around one narrative, conversational marketing, you run the danger of getting boxed in, being seen only as the chat widget company, no matter how big you get. So around 2020, Drift made a deliberate move to widen the story. They repositioned around revenue, connecting sales and marketing across the entire customer lifecycle, and recast the product as a core part of the enterprise revenue stack rather than just a clever top-of-funnel tool. Strategic lessons for the modern leader. So what does a modern business leader actually take from all of this? First, name the category to own the mindshare. Drift's coining of conversational marketing wasn't just clever wordplay. It forced every incumbent to respond on Drift's terms. If you don't name your own category, your competitors or the market itself will define you as simply a cheaper or slightly better version of something that already exists. Second, speak in the buyer's own words. Drift's marketing team kept a running file, literally called Their Words, full of actual language pulled from real customers. Marketing lands when it mirrors how the buyer already talks to themselves, not when it sounds like it was written by a committee of copywriters. Third, do the things that don't scale, precisely so you can scale faster. While the rest of the industry was busy automating and gating everything behind forms, Drift was mailing physical books and building community through hubs like Drift Insider. Those high-effort, seemingly inefficient moves compounded over time into a brand moat that held up even as the product category around them got crowded. Conclusion. Drift's arc. From a two-person startup in Boston to a sale to Vista Equity Partners in 2021 reported at more than $1 billion and later its absorption into SalesLoft in early 2024 is really a case study in marketing-led product strategy. David Cancel didn't just build a chatbot. He built a narrative persuasive enough to convince an entire industry that the old way of buying software was already broken. And that's the real lesson here for any company navigating a market that feels saturated. In a world of near-infinite software supply, the product alone stops being a sufficient differentiator. The story you tell, the category you're willing to name, and the friction you're willing to remove for the buyer, those become the real engines of product-market fit. Software, Drift's founders would argue, is a commodity, but a well-told story behaves like a monopoly. And if you're looking for your next competitive advantage, maybe stop searching for the next feature and start searching for the next narrative. This was the marketing behind rapid growth. See you in the next episode.